Every Spider-Man Ever presents Amazing Spider-Man issue 32. In an underwater base, the Master Planner curses Spider-Man, and we finally learn who they are. Dr. Octopus, who wants to use radiation to become one of the most feared humans in the world. He just needs a few more pieces of equipment and orders his men to steal anything radioactive coming into the city. On the surface, Peter Parker is at the Daily Bugle to sell photographs when he bumps into Betty and Ned Leeds. Since Betty will never love him as Spider-Man, he decides to play the cad, claiming Betty was just good for a few laughs and getting physical with Ned when he tries to get Peter to be nice to Betty. This approach will hurt Betty, he thinks, but hopefully it will get her to move on from Peter. But she refuses to move on. She knows that he's not really like this. With Betty still pining after him, Peter arrives at the hospital to visit his sick aunt. There, a doctor tells Peter what the problem is. Somehow, radioactivity has gotten into her bloodstream. The doctors are baffled about how it could have happened, but Peter thinks he knows. It was the blood transfusion that he gave her months ago. Somehow, the radioactivity that turned him into Spider-Man is killing his aunt. At home, Peter wrecks the place in anger, thinking himself responsible for both of his parent figures dying. But he has to do something, and he knows just the person who'll help. Dr. Kurt Connors, the man formerly known as the Lizard. And lucky for Peter, Connors has recently moved from Florida to New York. So as Spider-Man, Peter steals his aunt's blood sample and races to Dr. Connors, explaining the issues that a friend is having. And Connors has a solution, a radioactive chemical known as ISO-36. It's expensive, but Spidey says he'll find a way to afford it and asks Connors to get some as soon as possible. And to afford it, Peter Parker pawns off all of his scientific equipment. Unfortunately, the ISO-36 is stolen by the Master Planner's gang as it arrives by plane. When Spidey learns about the theft, he knows immediately who's responsible, but doesn't know where the Master Planner is hiding. So he swings to the Bugle looking for Foswell, scaring Betty in the process, and finds Foswell in the streets below. He tells him to find out who the Master Planner is, and that he'll share the story with him, and then he swings away for a hunt of his own. Spider-Man tears apart gang after gang, looking for information, no longer the quippy hero and instead a whirlwind of violence. The kid gloves are off as Aunt May slips into a coma. Eventually, Spidey discovers a secret door that leads to a group of purple men that work with the Master Planner. Spidey takes them apart easily and finds reinforcements coming through another hidden door, so he jumps through that just in time in search for the ISO-36. But little does he know that he's walking into the Master Planner's trap. Spider-Man finds his way into a large room filled with machinery and with the ISO-36 on easy display, but when he moves towards it, he's electrocuted and falls to the ground. Dr. Octopus springs his surprise, ready to defeat Spider-Man, but he doesn't account for a Spidey on a timescale with a dying aunt, and our superhero fights back hard and relents little. Spidey is so vicious that Doc Ock flees, but also so vicious that he smashes the main support beam for the equipment and it all falls down on top of him. Trapped under this equipment, some of it weighing as much as a locomotive, Spider-Man is inches away from the ISO-36. He watches as water begins to drip from the ceiling, the river above ready to flood in, powerless to stop it. He is lost, too weak and too tired to lift anything off of himself. Elsewhere, his dying aunt whispers his name. Elsewhere, Doc Connors frets that they're running out of time for the antidote to work. Elsewhere, purple men guard the exit to the chamber. And Spider-Man sinks down in defeat. He has failed. Thank you for watching, and while you decide what to watch next, here's a fun fact about this issue. The equipment that Peter sells to get the ISO-36 includes the microscope that was given to him by Uncle Ben in the very first issue.